All right, let's talk about India's tech scene, because something really interesting is happening. A new report from EY and the CII just dropped, and it highlights this huge puzzle. See, on one hand, you've got this massive, full-blown AI revolution. But on the other hand, the actual investment, it just doesn't seem to match the hype. So today, we're going to break down this paradox. Why is there such a huge gap between what Indian businesses believe about AI and what they're actually spending on it?
Okay, so first things first. The beginning of this story is all about incredible momentum. You can really think of it like India's AI gold rush. The data shows companies are not just dipping their toes in the water anymore, they're jumping in head first, and they're doing it fast. And get this, here's the first number that really stands out. 47%. That's almost half of all enterprises in India. They're not just running little tests or pilots anymore. Nope, they have multiple generative AI use cases live and in production right now. This means AI is officially moving out of the lab and right into the heart of how they do business every single day.
So what's driving all this? It's pure confidence. A huge 76% of business leaders believe generative AI is going to be a complete game changer for their companies. They don't just see the potential. They are absolutely convinced this is the future.
And you know, this confidence, it's turning into a real feeling of readiness. The report calls it a decisive shift from pilot to performance. In fact, 63% of leaders say, yep, we feel ready to use AI effectively. So the big takeaway here is that the era of just experimenting with AI is pretty much over. For these companies, AI is now a core tool for getting real, measurable results. So the picture seems pretty clear, right? High adoption, massive confidence, everybody's ready to go. You'd think the money would just be pouring in. But this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. And we run straight into the central paradox of India's whole AI journey. The report has a great name for it, the conviction versus commitment gap. The conviction part is easy to see. That's the 76% of leaders who are totally sold on AI's potential. But the commitment part, well, that's all about the money, the actual investment. And as you're about to see, there's a serious imbalance between the two.
And wow, here is that imbalance in plain sight. Despite all that optimism, over 95% of organizations are spending less than 20% of their total IT budget on AI. Just a tiny 4% are spending more than that. The conviction is absolutely there, but the financial commitment just isn't keeping up. The talk is big, but the spending is, well, it's small.
So, this brings us to the core question of this whole explainer. What is going on here? If everybody is so confident, why is the investment so low? It just doesn't seem to make sense. So, let's try to decode this disconnect.
Okay, the report actually helps us figure this out. And the answer isn't that people are losing faith in the technology. Not at all. It's much more practical than that, and it's rooted in some real-world barriers and some very specific business priorities.
And here it is, the number one obstacle, speed. A massive 91% of leaders point to how long it takes to actually deploy AI as their single biggest barrier. It's that classic build versus buy dilemma, you know? Building your own custom AI is slow and super expensive, but buying a solution off the shelf can be too rigid. This deployment bottleneck is the main reason they're hesitating to write those big checks.
So where is the limited AI money actually going? Well, it's being aimed with surgical precision at the areas that promise the fastest return. We're talking about making operations more efficient, improving customer service, and boosting marketing. These are all practical, quick wins, not some massive, risky 10-year projects. It's a strategy all about getting immediate value and getting it fast. But don't mistake this cautious spending for hesitation. It's actually part of a uniquely Indian strategy that's starting to take shape. To get around these challenges, companies are basically writing a whole new AI playbook, and it completely redefines how they even measure success.
And here's the real mind shift at the center of this new playbook. It's not just about ROI measured in simple cost savings anymore. The very definition of what success means is getting bigger. They're asking a much more important question. What does value from AI really look like? And this is what it looks like, the 5-dimensional ROI model. Of course, you've got the classics, saving time and boosting efficiency. But look at the other three. They're thinking about creating new revenue with business upside. They're using AI to get a long-term competitive edge, which is strategic differentiation. And they're making the business stronger against future problems with resilience. This isn't just about saving a few bucks anymore. It's about building a smarter, stronger business for the long haul.
So how are they actually making this new playbook work and solving that speed problem we talked about? Simple, by not going it alone. Instead of trying to build everything from scratch, 60% are teaming up and forming partnerships, and almost 80% are using hybrid models, mixing their own in-house teams with outside experts. It's a really pragmatic way to get results, faster.
So where does all this lead? Let's zoom out for a second and look at the 2026 outlook. The key thing to understand is that this isn't a story about being slow, it's about being deliberate. India is carving out its own path forward in AI, one that's uniquely cautious, but at the same time, very confident.
So really, it all comes down to this. On one side of the scale, you have this massive conviction, deep adoption, and a rock-solid belief in AI. On the other side, you have cautious commitment, super conservative spending. This is the strategic tightrope Indian companies are walking right now, trying to balance their big ambitions with a healthy dose of pragmatism. And this leaves us with one final fascinating question. Is this gap between belief and budget a bug in the system, or is it actually a feature? Is this cautious, partnership-focused strategy the smartest way to build a sustainable AI ecosystem, one that avoids all the hype, or is it a risk that could cause India to fall a step behind in the global race for AI dominance? Only time is going to tell, but it's a huge question that will define the next chapter of India's tech story.